A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by the Punch-Up Entertainment Network. I'm your humble host, Mike Argoni, and joining me, as always, the Jix to my big giz, it's John Campbell.
All the best characters in this. These names, Jix, Giz.
No, John, it's Big Giz. Don't you forget
Big Giz, sorry. Big Giz, lest I forget how big he is.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to our coverage of Shadows of the Empire. We are talking about the Star Wars sequel that wasn't, but also was, thanks to marketing. This is the cross-media promotional line that was concocted by studio executives and content creators back in the 90s as a, what if we made a Star Wars without the movie?
There are no Star Wars movies at this point, and we still want to make money. That's kind of what happened here.
I think it was a multitude of things. Obviously, one of the things that is my personal theory is like, okay, we need to like flush the tubes and spin the wheels a little bit and see if we can crank this marketing machine back up and running to see how we do when the prequels start ramping up, right?
A build from this to, is this 96?
Yes, this was in 96.
Right. The 97, they do the special edition theatrical releases. I feel like there was sort of this process that ramped up to reintroducing Star Wars as an IP to people before the prequels came. And that was definitely, this was peak Star Wars fandom for me. The special editions, which is interesting because they were movies that were 20 years old, but I was like, oh my God, these are movies I already know, but now there's so much more merch than there ever has been, and I'm just going to be rolling around in Star Wars stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And this also introduced Star Wars in a big way to a whole generation of kids who kind of came at it sideways through video games, right? You had this whole generation of kids that were growing up on the LucasArts games, and specifically like TIE Fighter and X-Wing, and then this, Shadows of the Empire, as a like video game introduction on the N64 was huge for kids.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this, that's the era we grew up in where the new stuff was ancillary stuff. We grew up on the comics and the video games and the novels.
And, of course, this comic book, because, today we are covering issue number 3 of Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. This was released in July of 1996, and features a creative team that's basically the same one as we saw last time, and will continue to be the same, but written by John Wagner, pencils by Killian Plunkett, inks by P. Craig Russell, colors by Carrie Porter. We have color separation by Heroic Age Colors, lettering by Dave Cooper, and we have a Hugh Fleming cover, which of course kind of like really makes it feel Star Warsy. We've talked about that at length previously.
The highlights of every issue are those Hugh Fleming covers, no question. So good and so much better than everything you'll find inside.
Well, look, let's talk about that cover. Let's get this cover here. It's Swoops. We got Swoops.
Swoops. Swoops. There it is.
Swoops. There it is.
Yeah. We've got Luke Skywalker just laying into this bike.
Yeah. Look, swoop gangs are a big part of Star Wars underworld kind of criminal intrigue stories, and I feel like this is sort of where that starts. Obviously, we'll have swoop gangs in other games going forward, and showing up in plenty of other properties, but this is the first time that they're kind of central to a story.
This cover sets it up, but I love that they've decided they're like, okay, Luke has a specific outfit in each movie. We need to create a Shadows of the Empire Luke look. And that is this sort of patterned vest that he's wearing. It's like,
he mugged the Shocker and took his shirt and...
Yes, it does have that vibe to it, right? Like, this like raised kind of patchy vest. I don't love it. Yeah, quilted is a good... Yes, exactly. But I just like the idea about, like, we need a Shadows of the Empire Luke. Because we're going to need to make an action figure called Shadows of the Empire, Luke. I might have... No, I don't know if I had that. I did have a Gizor, as I've said, but I don't think I had a... I was pretty fixated and still am on Luke in the all black from Jedi as being...
Oh, sure.
Did
you have a Dash Rendar?
Yes.
Of course.
I had a Dash and a Gizor, because it was like, once again, because I, being a kid, bought into this where I'm like, nope, the new characters.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get them. Mom, take me to Fred Meyer. I've got to get the new Star Wars characters.
Well, and we'll get into kind of the parallels that happen between this comic and what's going on in the video games and the novel, because obviously I'm doing a little bit more of a deep dive on that than you.
Yeah, which I appreciate. That was not going to happen for me.
But yeah, let's get into the center of all this. We got our beautiful Dark Horse. I mean, Disney. I mean, timeline.
Marvel, Star Wars.
Yeah, placing this firmly between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Don't you forget it.
I love that you can just erase, like, where they've clearly just erased things that used to say Dark Horse.
Look, what are they going to pay all those graphic designers for, if not to obliterate other logos?
I love the idea that it was just someone's job to go into Photoshop and erase a Dark Horse logo and put a Disney logo in. Boom.
And they had to do it 10,000 times when they bought Star Wars.
Yeah. Here's a question. Is any of this considered canon?
No.
Okay. But also there's nothing that actively refutes it either, right?
I mean, we're in the middle of it being refuted as we speak, because that's what the Marvel Comics of right now is doing. Yeah.
I've only read some of those. I don't know if they're actually getting in, because, like, obviously one of the things this comic definitely does, and the novel certainly does as well, is really make Gizor important to setting up Return of the Jedi, and I imagine all of that is just out the window now.
Basically,
yeah.
Gizor in the current canon, Gizor and the Black Sun have basically been replaced by Crimson Dawn, at least in terms of like crime stories set in this era.
And that's fine with me. I really like the Crimson Dawn stuff. So,
and obviously there's a whole like story going on in the Marvel Comics with Kira coming back and her kind of using Han's frozen body as a cat's paw to lure the Empire out and distract the rebellion.
That's all Waco. She's a good character. I like that character. So
yeah,
do that. Get the hell away from this.
Let's get into it though, because watch out, it's Big Giz.
Look out, baby! It's everybody's favorite new character, who would definitely be voiced by John Goodman in an animated thing.
I don't. If this is an animated, I guess it depends on the release of the animated project, right? If this was wide release, John Goodman. If this is straight to video, it's John DiMaggio.
Yes. Do you need a big burly scumbag? Have you heard of John DiMaggio? As we're recording this, we've been watching Batman Cape Crusader, where he is like, oh, he does Bullock? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it tracks.
Of course.
The weird one that's getting me in the voice cast of that is Diedrich Bader as Harvey Dent, mostly because he is just another background Batman in my head.
Although he's doing a great, like, slick politician voice.
Yeah.
That. The one that gets me is Cedric Yarborough is Rupert Thorne.
Mm-hmm.
Which is out of left field. Okay, he's doing a great job. But anyway,
we have to be a pretty good Big Giz as well, I think.
Yeah. You just need a guy who can get down real low and be a Big Giz.
Because soup's off, Pally, as Big Giz is leading his swoop gang through the streets. Not even the streets, the hallways of Jabba's palace.
Yeah. Last one to Fat Jabba buys the drinks, boys.
And this just tells you what kind of reckless disregard the swoop gang has for the niceties of society, because they're flying their swoops through Jabba's hallways right up into his throne room.
Soup's Off Boys really got me, and it will be the first of so many one-liners in this comic. It's insane, the amount of one-liners.
So yeah, on this next page, we get the big slug himself. It is Jabba the Hutt speaking in perfect galactic common.
Not even indicating that it's translated from Huttese. That's what we read a lot of stuff like that where it's just put the brackets in and then it's fine.
So something in the Shadows of the Empire novel specifically, and something that we don't really get in this book, is this whole interaction between Xizor and Jabba. And it's definitely painted as Jabba is, while not necessarily in the Black Sun organization, is kind of very subservient to them and just like gives them a wide berth. And so there's this whole sequence where Xizor basically makes Jabba come to him on Coruscant and then forces him to speak Galactic Basic as just like, look, dispense with the Huttese. You're not here to impress anybody. Speak to me in a language I can speak.
Could you imagine actually hearing Jabba speak like English? It'd be so weird.
Well, because it definitely rewrites the character of Jabba as that being sort of a power move. And it kind of is, but It is a retcon that this book is kind of constructing that like, oh no, he can speak English or Galactic Basic or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. He chooses not to as a power move.
Which is fine as a character thing. It's just I don't want to have that confirmed and then have to hear him because that's weird. Once again, I just can't imagine Jabba's voice being like, it is customary to leave the swoop bikes at the dog is my like. I'm trying to. It doesn't even as I'm doing that. I'm like, no, it's wrong. Solo.
What's even weirder to me is Salacious B. Crumb here also speaking in English.
Yeah, Rancor food.
I was like, Salacious Crumb, you're allowed to cackle and say weird Huttese words. Don't be talking in English.
Yeah, this whole idea about like, so just everybody speaks this, and we're all just fucking around.
They're all just fucking with Luke specifically in Return of the Jedi.
But of course, because he's a big fat slug, he's filling his gullet here or whatever.
Yeah, we're showing Jabba being that big kind of. He's definitely a mix of lots of like crime lord cliches, right? And one of those is the glutton.
Yeah, absolutely, and we see a lot of the huts. There are smaller huts, but in general, they're all pretty big, and of course, just gross slug creatures.
I mean, yeah, my favorite, of course, being Gracchus the Hutt, who is just so jacked.
Yep. I gotta say though, the weirdest thing about this, Jabba's fly swatter, I just kept because they make big use of it throughout the next pages.
Yeah, so we go to the next page, and so the Swoop Gang has kind of like funneled into his throne room, basically, and
I don't like that either. I don't like the idea that these guys just roll up on Jabba. That really depowers Jabba.
Shadows of the Empire really makes Jabba feel less grand in the big scheme of things.
Which is bullshit because you keep talking about him in each of the movies so that when you finally get to him in Return of the Jedi, because I don't acknowledge whatever that weird nonsense in the New Hope Special Edition is, that it was, I remember as a kid though, when you saw Return of the Jedi, like, oh, that's Jabba, oh man, this guy's gross but uber powerful, and like, it's hard to get into his palace and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Now I hear these guys just rolling and go like, sup, Jabba, fatty.
Yeah, I mean, and like
talking about this fat Jabba man, Hey.
Well, and our first introduction to Jabba the Hutt in the trilogy proper, right, outside of special edition added scenes,
right,
is a dancer pisses him off, so he kills her out of hand.
Yes, there needs to. That's it exactly. That's the thing about the glutton mob boss trope, as you're talking about, is the idea of this is a guy who can't move but can wave his hand and end people's lives.
Right.
That Roman emperor sort of thing too, where it's like off with his head.
And so when you really degrade him by even having his underlings disrespect him, it really cranks the fear of the character down. Absolutely.
And this book does nothing but depower beloved Star Wars characters, because we'll talk about Boba Fett and even Darth Vader to a certain extent.
But yeah, so we have Big Giz rolling up here. We also have with him Jix. Jix, if we remember, that beloved character is
best pal?
Is Darth Vader's best pal and like what if Han Solo but evil?
Yeah. Oh God. By the way, Star Wars, you need to stop starting ideas with what if Han Solo but, because it's gotten you in trouble so much. He's such a good character that they're just like, well, maybe we can make another. You can't make another Han Solo. You can't force that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, but then we run into the problem of like, well, let's just keep bringing Han Solo back forever.
Well, that's another
and
problem.
Harrison Ford gets real cranky about that.
Yeah. Man, did you see him at Comic-Con? He was having the time of his life there.
I think because they asked politely and he said sure. That's what Harrison Ford likes.
Yeah, that's it. He's willing to do it, but just don't expect him to do it, okay?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. They bring him in and they're like, this is our new friend Jix. And Jabba's like, I'm not sure about him, but Big Giz is like, hey, this guy's pretty cool.
I'll vouch for him. And yeah, we got this fly swatter here that he's kind of using as like his regal scepter. He's like pointing it around and like sticking it under people's chin.
It's another thing where it's like, it's not a Star Wars thing. It's just a fly swatter from our world. It's weird. And I guess we're supposed to think because Jabba smells like shit, there's a bunch of flies around him, right?
But then draw the flies.
Yeah, they don't do that. They just do the fly swatter. And also, that's not a thing we're used to seeing as visuals of Jabba.
So throughout this scene, we're basically establishing that the kind of bounty on Luke Skywalker has changed. That somebody wants him dead, and all of these criminal lowlifes thinks that it's still Darth Vader. Jix, who we, the readers, know is Darth Vader's best pal, knows for a fact that he wants him alive.
Yeah. And so I just... so let's see here. Just a bunch of exposition shit with them.
Yeah, Jabba's basically saying, like, hey, we think Skywalker's been seen at Ben Kenobi's former dwelling. Why don't you go get him? And by the way, I don't need him alive. And then on the next page, we cut to a bar somewhere, a cantina, if you will. And Jix is basically being like, are you all sure that Darth Vader wants him dead? I think that he wants him alive. And then all the other biker gang is like, oh, big man knows Darth Vader now, huh?
And then he has to be like, no. I'm definitely not best pals with him. I'm definitely not currently crashing on his couch or anything. Okay? By the way, I've hit this. Jix is the Kato Kalin to Vader's OJ, right? I was just waiting for the burgers, man, when OJ did whatever he may or may not have done, okay? Yeah.
Then we get Spiker here, who we got introduced to last issue, but is a bit more of a role in this issue. He's the guy, who'd have thunk, covered in spikes.
Yeah, he looks dumb. That's a pretty dumb... He's in purple armor with spikes on it.
He looks like a Power Rangers bad guy.
Yeah, he doesn't... I guess that's what I'm saying. He does not fit in the world. Yes. And even his name being Spiker would be like, oh no, Rita sent down Spiker! Yeah. They didn't work hard on the names over on Power Rangers.
No.
So,
specifically in the American translation.
Yes, I'm talking about Power Rangers, not Super Sentai. That's a different. Yeah.
So the gang is all getting together. They're like, all right, boys, let's go kill us a Luke Skywalker. But who's this cunning, handsome, not Han Solo at all character hiding in the shadows overhearing all this?
It took me a split second to realize it wasn't Jix, but be like, no, wait, it's Dash Rendar.
It's the other one.
It's the other what if Han Solo but.
Because remember, Dash Rendar has been sent to keep an eye on Luke Skywalker. Now, did the comic book actually tell us that? No. But I know it because I've read the novel.
Yeah, because last we actually had Dash Rendar in this comic. He left everyone going, I brought you here. I've earned my pay. Bye.
Yeah.
And so then, like a certain other smuggler we know, came back to save Luke Skywalker.
But here's the thing. In the book, there's this whole sequence where Leia's like, look, you go follow Luke to Tatooine and keep an eye on him, and I'll keep paying you. So this is not altruism.
Oh, wow. Okay, well then never mind. Because that is sort of the butt of him, right? What if Han Solo but always kind of a scoundrel.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get this sequence in which Luke, and again in the book there's more to it than this, Luke's been kind of working on his lightsaber the whole time, a new one, because he found some instruction books in Kenobi's...
Yeah, the plans in Ben's book were complicated. It would have just been, it could have just as easily blown up my hands. But it worked, so off we go.
Yeah, and in the book, obviously, they devote, like, whole sections throughout the, like, opening of the book to, and he's trying to make the crystal right, and he's trying to get the power converters correct.
Because, of course, now we have the context of they did shoot that scene that ended up getting deleted of Luke building his lightsaber that was supposed to be in Jedi. And so they sort of now are like, then in Shadows of the Empire, we can make it be canonically, at least at this point, that this is where Luke built his lightsaber during these events.
Yeah. So between this page and the last one, I do want to stop for a moment and recognize something from the video game, because there is a whole sequence in the game in which, as Dash Rendar, you hop on a swoop and chase this biker gang.
That makes sense. I mean, that feels like a video game level.
It is so one of the infamous things about the Shadows of the Empire video game is that, like, every level is kind of a new game. Like, there are some repeats here and there.
Yeah.
But this is the kart racer level.
Yeah.
In which a game mechanic that has never been introduced before and will never be used again, which is speeder racing, is introduced.
Okay.
And I remember playing this as a kid and being, like, the most frustrated I've ever been with a video game. And rewatching footage of this level being played, I totally, like, had traumatic flashbacks of just, like, my God, the controls were terrible, and, like, the game didn't move well, and it was just incredibly frustrating. And it is this whole sequence in which you're on a speeder bike trying to chase down these swoop gang members, and you basically have to kill all of them before they get to Luke. And so you're racing through Mos Eisley at first, and you're just, like, bouncing off of buildings because you can barely control the damn thing. Then you get out onto the Dune Sea, and you're chasing guys around sand dunes and over Sarlacc pits, and eventually get into Beggar's Canyon.
In concept, sounds cool.
Oh, yeah, and if it controlled worth a damn, then maybe it would be good.
Sure. But you're saying no.
No. Go look up Shadows of the Empire like on YouTube, and go look up the speeder chase sequence. It is one of the most vomit-inducing things you will ever watch. It is just, like, really jarring how it's either going full speed or not, and, like, there's no braking or, like, power sliding. There's no finesse to the controls of this thing.
That does sound awful.
Yeah, even just watching it is a little, like, nauseous. So I just wanted to highlight that, because it was just...
that sort of a problem with that game? Was it a little slapdash?
I don't know if slapdash is the right word. And again, most of the footage you can find these days, or even, like, versions of it that can be played, are the N64, like, someone had a ROM of it. Because again, the PC version is basically unplayable.
That's what you were saying, yeah.
And there was a consistency in the sections that were consistent, I guess. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So in the sections that were, like, the vast majority of the game is a third-person, like, action platformer. Think Ratchet and Clank, but bad.
Sure.
And those sections all kind of feel cohesive to an extent, but then they also introduce weird one-off mechanics like, this is the level where you get the jetpack. You know how the jetpack controls? Like ass? Cool.
That seems to be the big problem there, right, is the controls.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you have a game that was built for the N64, which has a, let us call it, unique controller style.
Certainly.
And then you port that over to the PC, and so suddenly you have to, like, remap how that game controls from a weird triangle controller onto a mouse and keyboard.
Right. Okay, yeah, that could be tough.
And assuming you don't have the access to a joystick like you would on the N64.
Right. Yeah, that would be key.
Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I just wanted to highlight that because it happens between these 2 pages of this comic.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's a thing though, where it's like this is one of those things, and this happens sporadically throughout this comic, where it's like Luke's like possibly in danger from these guys.
I mean, he's not a Jedi yet.
He's pretty far along at this point. I'm just saying, these guys, though, come on.
Yeah, because on this next page we get, oh, what's this? Jix took a shot at him too soon.
Yep. Oh, no. They're not taking prisoners.
Obviously, Jix took that early shot to try to, like, get Luke out of the way, because Jix's whole, like, side hustle here is making sure Luke Skywalker doesn't die.
Right, because he's doing right by his best pal Vader. But yeah, I also love rot you, Jix. Hey, nobody says rot me, you son of a bitch.
I do love Big Giz down at the bottom panel here. Blow this little runt to Bespin, boys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do like their purple blasters here. We don't see purple blaster bolts all that much.
You don't. That's cool. And Luke's, look at this. One tries to shoot him, and he just stangs that thing away.
Stang. Is that the sound a reflected blaster bolt makes?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Yeah. So he's lopping people off of their speeder bikes, and then we get a full page of Luke art being completely to test my lightsaber. I didn't reckon I'd be getting one so soon.
I think we might be treading some water here by needlessly including a full page of Luke, but okay.
Also, is his lightsaber blade supposed to be green or yellow? I mean, this is the green blade, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. That's very much the hilt from Return of the Jedi, and yeah, but it looks a little yellow.
And maybe that's just because that's how colors work.
Maybe. I mean, we turn the page, it looks a little more green on this next page.
Yeah.
Lots of, by the way, big complaint about this comic in general. Lots of thought bubbles. And I'm generally not a thought bubbles fan, across the board.
Now, which do you prefer? Because this book does both, and we've run into this issue a lot over the course of our coverage. Do you prefer thought bubbles or them speaking aloud to no one?
Well, that is worse. Yeah, that is worse. In general, in comics, I prefer the boxes that are like
caption boxes,
narration. Yeah, if you're gonna do that, that's fine. Batman does that a lot and stuff like. Mostly though, but still, once again, fitting characters who are doing that in some way. Pick whether Batman or Punisher. People are actually like chronicling what they're doing. I almost feel like this gets into that voiceover thing in screenwriting too, where it's like this is just lazy writing. Just have Luke go like, "Gee, I wonder," it's just.
Because in this particular instance on this top panel, he's thinking to himself, I'll stand a better chance on one of these, as he's kicking somebody off of a speeder bike and leaping onto it.
Yeah,
and I think
you have to be thinking that?
Well, the reason I think they need that bubble, because the art direction here is a little unclear. Because you see him kicking this guy, and then on the next panel, you have Big Giz saying after him, sort of implying that they're chasing Luke, but we can't really see Luke on the speeder that they're chasing.
Yeah. That's bad art storytelling. That's bad image storytelling or whatever, between panels. This book is not super well done. This may be a little slapdash. I mean, in terms of it's also by design, as we've talked about. It is sort of additive to a thing that already exists, because we haven't gotten into it yet, but later on in this issue and future issues, there's a lot of stuff where they have to quickly go over what's happened in the novel to progress the plot of this comic. But there has to basically be a cutaway to, wow, that just happened.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it makes no sense.
But speaking of no sense, here comes Dash Rendar.
Dash Rendar! He's not Han Solo.
And we get them racing into Beggar's Canyon on this next page. Luke is being chased by...
take them off is in Beggar's Canyon. He thinks.
Yeah, he thinks to himself.
You know what else could have done is have Big Giz go, oh no, he's heading into Beggar's Canyon.
But no, we've got Big Giz and Jix chasing after him. Jix thinking to himself, uh-oh, Big Giz is about to get Luke Skywalker. I better crash my speeder into his.
You know what else helps with him thinking Big Giz has him is Big Giz saying, "Here it comes, Skywalker." What the?
Yeah. Jix letting out a "steering's gone, look out," kind of faking his own distress as he crashes into Big Giz.
Oh, no, he doesn't crash into him. He skakashes into him.
That is a big skakash.
Mm-hmm. And also just an excuse for Jix to show off them abs he's so proud of. Look at that.
Look, you don't go shirtless wearing only a vest and not show off the abs.
Yeah. We can talk about what Big Giz has chosen to show off, but that's a different matter.
Well, look, some people have a six-pack, some people have a bit of a tummy, and he's got a full keg.
Yeah. That was the Simpsons thing. Everyone here has a six-pack. I'm the only one with a keg. So yeah, anyway, back into Beggar's Canyon. Luke continues to fly around.
Now let's see how the rest of them handle those swoop bikes as Luke...
Super necessary to hear him say that.
Because Luke is doing some fancy flying / driving so that he can get some of these other swoops to go Vadoom.
Yeah, it's pretty poorly drawn, though, right? Like, it's pretty... I don't really know what Luke is doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's not poorly drawn on a technical level.
No,
it's poorly drawn in a, like, visual storytelling level.
It's poorly drafted, I think, might be the term you would use. This guy's not a great draftsman in terms of actually, like, progression of action in this. Is really rough, which is tough for a medium that conveys action through multiple pictures being put next to each other.
Because, yeah, I guess let's just take this sequence here as a prime example. So, the top left inset panel, we have Luke, we assume, because it's his thought bubble. We can't actually see who's on this speeder.
Right.
Going down a tight canyon, being followed by two other swoops.
Yeah.
The next panel that is beneath this inset panel is then showing Luke, clearly Luke, flying beneath this rocky outcropping.
Yeah.
Now, on the bottom, the middle two panels, the left one shows Spiker, the big spiky purple guy, beginning to drive underneath that rocky outcropping, and another swoop guy just flying straight into it for no apparent reason.
That's what I can't figure out, is I don't understand what move Luke is doing here in the second panel that would make this guy... like, there's so much room. You would have to aim for this thing. Like, there's so much room under it. There's more room under it than above it. Why would this guy smash into that rock?
I don't know. But then we get this last little long panel of Luke dragging his lightsaber across a rocky surface, which, in theory, cool.
Right, but a weird choice to do it like that, and also the detail of it, they're sort of just hinting at the rock wall.
Well, especially because we don't... It's tough to tell exactly what it's doing, because on the next page, we get a couple of the swoop gang guys riding through what looks like an asteroid field. So I guess Luke is knocking a bunch of rocks off the wall, and they're flying back at the swoop gang.
Yeah. And of course, Spiker, like, ducks under them, and the guy behind him gets hit by them.
Right.
Which is weird. Also, it seems like that guy's, like, right on his ass. Like, that guy, like, if you imagine the swoop bike that guy's on would be, like, on top of Spiker's bike.
Or that swoop bike guy is much smaller than Spiker.
Maybe, yes. Yeah, that's it. There it is.
The force perspective here is really weird, because Spiker is kind of moving through the rocks, but one of the rocks that seems to be just moving past his helmet is also hitting a person behind him.
Correct.
Yeah. It's very odd force perspective.
It's the action here is a little. It's just a little weak. The like, it's something people complain about in movies, but it's really the case here. They're not doing a great job of establishing the geography of the space and where people are in relation to each other.
Yeah, because in this next sequence, when Luke thinks to himself, gotta turn up the heat, he then flies through this little rocky circle. It's like a natural outcropping that has formed a ring, and there's just enough space for him to fly through it, so he does.
Mm-hmm.
But it also establishes that it's this, like, kind of pinnacle of stone, like, sitting in the middle of the canyon with plenty of room to either side of it. So when the other swoop bikers follow him into this little rocky ring, why?
Yeah, I don't know. They're like, these guys are incredibly dumb.
I mean, there's a biker gang. That's an easy trope, right? It's just big dumb biker gang.
But they're like particularly dumb.
Yeah. And also, what's going on in this bottom right panel? Is this guy being stabbed by Luke's lightsaber?
Yes.
And then how would they get that close?
I don't know.
Or no, he's not being stabbed. He's just being shot by another green blaster bolt.
When I turn this page here, that's Dash Rendar. But bad coloring decision to make Dash's blaster bolts green, because it reads as Luke's lightsaber blade then. Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, poor coloring choice there.
Because I had to look this up. I had to look up Killian Plunkett out of curiosity at what else he's done. The answer, a lot of Dark Horse Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Like a ton of it. In fact, I do recognize some of his designs there. Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about him more. And I don't know how much is his fault. Like I said, I don't know how fast this was needed as well.
Yeah, comics are always such, in general, a big afterthought when it comes to cross-promotional material. Especially at this time, I'm sure the toy and, like, book people were kind of driving this whole initiative.
According to Plunkett, he said working for this Star Wars project caused, quote, overexcitement and brain lock, and that he feels he attempted to fit all the cool things he could think of in one page. So
and to the detriment of the narrative, I think.
How this was done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that may be the case. The next thing he does after this is a 6-part Mara Jade miniseries. So,
and boy, we haven't even scratched the surface on Mara Jade.
No, we'll get there when we get there, because we are sort of vaguely following the Star Wars canon chronologically. So, we'll get to Mara Jade when she comes in to the story,
right,
as it were. But yeah, Dash Rendar, what are you doing here?
Saving your butt from swoop scum, it looks like.
Dash Rendar, what are you doing here is such the audience hold for audience applause. Yeah. Except I hate this guy.
But he got to look at their tattoos. That gang was working for Jabba. I was in Mos Eisley sniffing around when I overheard them talking. They had orders to kill you.
No mention, as you're talking about the book, that Leia gave him more money.
Yeah, no. He just happened to be in Mos Eisley.
The assassination attempt at Gaul, and you have to figure Darth Vader is no longer your number one admirer. This Dash Rendar, he's totally in my face. Such a 90s creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's radical and tubular.
Yeah. Is Dash Rendar the Poochie of Star Wars?
Oh, he's the Poochie of Shadows of the Empire, that's for sure.
There's no question about that. A book that, though, has a few characters running for Poochie status. Because let's forget about Jix, but I think Dash Rendar takes it.
Well, this comic has a Jix fixation, that a Jixation, if you will.
Jixation.
That none of the other properties of Shadows of the Empire really has.
Worst case of Jixation I've ever seen, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. You know, yeah, and there's no known cure. Except more Jix. Yes. All right, so let's cut to Jix and Big Giz, our favorite characters.
Yeah, and look, if there's one thing we can say about Jix is that he does beat Big Giz to death with a rock, so we gotta give him that.
I'll give him that, but not before Big Giz says his worst line, which is, "Your name ought to be Jinx, not Jix." Get out of here with that bullshit dialogue. That's horrible.
Yeah, because we see Big Giz has pulled out a blaster, and he's about to shoot Luke in the back, and then Jix brains him in the head with a rock.
Oh, and it's pretty brutal for Star Wars. Dripping gore off of that rock.
Yeah, you rarely see blood dripping off of a bludgeoning implement in Star Wars.
You also know he's hit the brain because as he's falling, Big Giz says, "Eagle, Biggle."
Yeah, you've clearly hit the language center of the brain with that stone.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. And Jix is pretty happy with how this turned out, actually.
You were right about one thing, Giz. Me and Vader are on speaking terms, though it's him that does most of the talking.
And like I told you, and then turn the page, he definitely wants Skywalker alive.
So then this is a whole thing that's also in the novel. We have this probe droid or messenger droid sort of crash land at Obi-Wan Kenobi's place.
This is just jammed in here, man.
Oh, and in these next few panels is a big example of what you're talking about in terms of like, okay, we need to explain what happened in a couple of chapters of the book in like 5 dialogue bubbles.
This has that like Speed Racer, like early American dubs of anime. Like, it's a message for Leia from Koth Malan, the head of the Bothan spy. Like, it all just feels like to say all this in an amount of time. His spies have uncovered information about a secret project the Empire's cooking up. He must see Leia immediately. Well, then he's out of luck. Like it just has that like.
But Speed, the princess, and the others are on Rhodia.
Yeah. Speed can never know that I'm really his brother. Yeah, it has the. Yeah, it's all about, and of course, they take a lot from the one line about many Bothans died to bring us this information. They expand that a lot here.
Well, and here's the thing, like, they do, but it's really abridged in this comic specifically.
And also they kind of shit on. They make the Bothans pretty useless.
Well, in the book, there's way more to it, right? Like, Luke has to go to Bothwui and, like, meet with the Bothans and train their fighter pilots a little bit, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Here, they're just like, some Bothans did something. All right.
And many of them died.
Yeah. I hear a lot of them died. It's too bad. All right.
Now, when Mon Mothma originally says in Return of the Jedi, many Bothans died to bring us this information, what's a nice round number you would put on many Bothans died?
20 to 50?
Yeah. What about 6?
Oh, that's not. I would not describe that as many by any stretch of
a handful, maybe?
A few. A couple of Bothans died. I don't know.
Some Bothans died. Doesn't have the impact.
That's not notable. That's not a notable amount of like, the Bothan population was actually decreased by what happened.
It was though by 6.
By 6, yeah, but I'm saying that's not like a note. They're not changing the sign. Changing the population. Now entering Bothwui. Anyway.
So, yeah. And this is where we get a little bit of a inconsistency here in the comic, because Luke says, okay, I gotta go take care of this Bothan thing. If you want to come, you can. And Dash Rendar says, well, don't mind if I tag along. Gotta earn my pay.
Pay?
Leia, but in the book.
Yeah. How about a very not a weird R2 to imagine him going doop?
I like a good doop doop.
Doop doop.
Doop doop.
Yep. Anyway, let's cut to the villains we actually care about. Darth Vader and the Emperor, who are fighting.
Look, it's a classic lover's quarrel.
Yeah, I also have. I understand that they're trying to seed the tears in their relationship that are hinted at, of course, in the end of Empire, and then become obviously a big deal in Return of the Jedi. But like they're arguing about like resource management and shit here.
Because we have basically entering in media res in this conversation. We have Darth Vader saying, look, you can't just go shipping around the plans for Death Star 2 on a single craft. That would be insane. We gotta have a heavy escort on this thing. And the Emperor's like, oh, you got a problem with that, Vader?
Oh, I'm sorry, did someone just question my orders? You know how I feel about that, Vader?
The plans are made, and I see no reason to revise them. Your advice has not been notably successful in other matters of late.
I do feel like also Vader at this point has known the Emperor long enough to maybe like drop, like he's obviously like, you aren't going to win this guy over with like, but listen, logically there's not, So I think the whole idea about like, I don't know. And also just the idea that the Emperor's like, look, that's what we're doing, pal, and I'm digging in. It's just...
And again, in the book, there's more to it of like, okay, clearly this is Palpatine manipulating Vader and setting him on a course against Xizor, and so that like his two kind of apprentices can duke it out.
Right, and that would make more sense. I also just don't like where he's just like, if you proceed with this plan, it is against my sternest warning, Emperor.
I mean, he's giving you a stern warning. You know that thing Vader always does? Stern warnings?
Yeah. You are on notice, pal.
You're on thin ice, buddy.
Yeah. Uh-oh, you just made the list.
Double secret probation.
Yeah, Vader famous for being like, all right, buddy, one more chance, okay? Which he did actually do with Jix, where it's like, I've almost had enough of you, but we're going to give you one more, buddy.
If there was anyone that Vader would do that for, it's probably the Emperor, right?
It is, but I don't think he would say it, I guess is what I'm saying. The line, like, he would just be like, I can't imagine him being like, all right, but your funeral, Emperor.
I wanted in writing that I said this was a bad idea.
Note that down. Put that in the minutes. And then here comes our favorite douchebag.
Yeah, Prince Xizor. He's hanging around, and
guy. I gotta say, I do not like this character.
He's written to be an asshole and to be hated.
Yeah, and then of course what they end up doing with him that we'll get to with Leia is where I.
Oh boy, yep. He's also a sex pest. Did we mention that?
Yeah, that's Lord Vader was most unhappy with the Emperor's plan, in this case with good reason.
Yeah, so it turns out here that Xizor is sort of playing both sides against the middle, and he is going to leak the location of the shipment of the plans for the Death Star 2 to the Rebellion.
I feel like the thing with Xizor now, too, reading him now as opposed to when this came out, is there have just been so many other better characters that serve this sort of all sides against the middle role in Star. You know, I mean, like it's just he's a first draft of a kind of character we'll come to see in a lot more Star Wars.
Yeah, and obviously, like the Thrawn trilogy sort of predates this.
Yeah,
and
Thrawn's whole thing is really, more interesting.
Well, because Thrawn is the pragmatist, right? And that's what they're sort of going for with Xizor, but a pragmatist who exists outside of the Imperial hierarchy, which Thrawn wasn't. But Thrawn also didn't, at least in the original Thrawn trilogy, didn't have to compete with Vader or Palpatine.
Thrawn's service was to the concept of the Empire, not the weird magic religion that, I mean, that was sort of the thing that was interesting about him. Is this is a guy who's a true believer in the concept of the totalitarian regime.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Xizor is all about personal power, right? So, and that's interesting in its own way, but because we've seen it iterated on so many times since then, he feels a little dated.
I think the first arc of the Darth Vader comic does better with this.
Right. And like another character who is in this similar vein of playing both sides and sort of out for themselves is Aphra, right?
Yes.
Like, she doesn't have the kind of Bond villain aesthetic that Xizor does, and because she's a plucky underdog, but doing the same things, basically.
That's a new take. That feels fresh, as opposed to just another conniving guy going, well,
Yeah, because he's talking to his robot assistant here. We don't know... do they say she's a robot in this comic? I don't remember.
I don't think they have. Guri?
Yeah, Guri, she's like a life model decoy, basically. Think of her as an LMD.
I don't know if they've said that. We've talked about that on here, but I don't know if the comics actually said that.
Yeah. But he's basically monologuing to her, saying, like, look, I just in the in minuscule chance that the rebellion wins this war, I want them to remember that Black Sun was a friend in all of this.
Yes, no matter what, Xizor's coming out on top, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So,
Meanwhile,
everyone's favorite character, Forlom.
Hey, Forlom, yeah. You know what? The Sears never ran out of Forlom figures, I'll say that much.
Oh, man. Do you remember that? I remember that so much as a kid, going to Target or whatever and being like, yeah, Forlom is a perfect example of, like, they have 8 Forloms. You know, it's like, it was always like, oh, battle damage stormtrooper? Shit. None of the characters I want are here. Klingon, soldier is here.
Yeah. Forlom is, of the bounty hunters arranged on the Superstar Destroyer and Empire, Forlom is, like, I think the bottom of the list, right? Like, do you take Dengar over Forlom?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forlom is the other robot who's not as cool.
Yeah, he's not as cool, IG-88, yeah.
Right, because IG-88 is so striking, and as a kid, you're just like, whoa, what is that thing? It's so different than other droids we've seen. And then Forlom, you're like, he's kind of 3PO with a weird head.
Yeah.
But anyway, oh boy. When I turned the page reading this last night, I was like, no, don't do it, comic. Not more monologuing to Boba Fett to Carbonite Han Solo.
Because lest we forget, a bunch of these bounty hunters basically jumped Boba Fett in the previous issues, and one of them was Forlom, and they got onto Slave One, and Boba Fett killed them all. But what's this? In the hold of Slave One with all these other corpses, Forlom is putting himself back together.
Yes. Oh no, that's bad news for. Do you love 48 Hours but wish that Eddie Murphy was frozen the whole movie? Have I got a story for you?
What if Midnight Run, but only one of the characters could talk?
Yeah. Charles Grodin is mute for some reason. A fine predicament this is, Solo. Hiding from rebels and bounty hunters alike, all because of you. What do you with you? Oh my God! Once again, Boba Fett has lost his mind.
Boba Fett just monologuing to the frozen body of Han Solo.
The whole page!
It's basically the whole page, yeah.
Yeah.
Until we get these last 2 panels where, Forlom gets up.
Yeah. And says, yes!
He's like fucking Frankenstein's monster.
Yes. And I do kind of like the smoke coming out of his chest.
Yeah. On the next page, we get, what's this? There's a transmission detected in the mid-level hold. I love Boba Fett's reaction. What?
Try to imagine Tamora Morrison going, what?
It's the extra A's and the like dash question mark that give it that dude, where's my car vibe, right?
Yeah. And you're just like, I can't. This book does nothing but trash Boba Fett as a character.
Yeah. And again, this book predates like
a lot of
the bounty hunters
stuff that a lot of where we became huge Boba Fett fans. Of course, there's a reason us 90s kids love this character, and that stuff hasn't happened yet. But still, my God.
What?
Whoa! Yeah.
But what's this? It's everyone's favorite lizard man, Bosk. He's coming with the Hound's Tooth. They're coming for... they got the transmission that Forlom sent, so they're coming for the Slave One.
It's Forlom, of all people. And then Boba Fett.
And Zuckuss is with Bosk as well, because you can't have Forlom without a Zuckuss.
Yeah, we also meet some new bounty hunters in this, too, who you can see over on
They don't get names, and so they're immediately like up there with cannon fodder, the first one.
Well, we got Boba Fett zatting at Forlom.
This next page... So we always talk about how, like, I just can't imagine 3PO, like, running or doing anything athletic. Yeah. How about Forlom doing a fucking cartwheel?
Nope. Wow. Doing, like, a full-on Matrix, like, mid-air shoot as you're turning.
Yeah. So they're exchanging fire, Forlom dodging, but then Boba Fett opens up a trapdoor underneath him and shoots him a couple times while Forlom falls into a garbage chute.
Boba Fett's favorite move in this whole comic is to open up trapdoors. That's like his thing.
I love the idea that the Slave One is like a haunted house that he can just trigger little pitfalls for people.
I mean, at this point, Slave One is so underrepresented and stuff that, yeah, sure, they're just like, maybe that's a thing, is he's just got traps everywhere.
Also, the ship seems way bigger than it looks like from outside.
Also, the famous thing I love about Boba Fett that we all do, his quips.
Because he shoots Forlom's arm off and then says, "That's what I call disarmed."
I read that and went, well, that's pretty out of character for this guy, who actually is pretty much most famous for not talking that much.
As you wish.
Yeah, he's a man of few words, which is kind of what gives him that aesthetic, right? Like, when he does talk, it's quick and to the point. That's what I call disarmed. Is not, yeah. He's not a Bronson character.
Yeah, so Forlom is like, "No, you're wrong, Fett. I can still defeat you." And he triggers his own arm to shoot down.
Interesting. That's new for droids, I think.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting, like, what if Forlom can, like, be the disassembled man sort of idea? Just like he can independently control all of his parts.
Yeah, they almost made Forlom cool.
But then he gets shot in the head.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. Yeah. It's like, oh, you had a brief idea about a cool Forlom thing? Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, because he shot the unit that routes power to all the ship's weapon systems has been destroyed.
Because I can kill off Forlom, because nobody's going to get on your ass about that.
Also, none of these characters show back up in Jedi, so for all we know, they do die between these events.
I think where Lucasfilm was like, go nuts. It doesn't matter. Boba Fett has to make it to Jedi, but all the other bounty hunters can die. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think anyone else actually dies in this book besides Forlom, but Forlom's a droid. He can be rebuilt.
I mean, that's another thing, too. There is that out, too, if you wanted to. It's like, ever since I reassembled myself. I mean, he's already just reassembled himself in this scene, so, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. The headshot seems a little permanent.
Seems a little definitive.
You see the back of his head getting blown out.
Yeah, they give it a scrang, but like you color that red, and that would be an incredibly gruesome panel.
Yeah, and then just once again the smoking hole in his head.
But here comes the Hound's Tooth. We got a fadam as the Slave One's being shot at.
Says Boba Fett.
Then we get another, like, detailed art page as they're closing in on Slave One, and Bosk is saying, "Hey, it's me, Bosk."
Boba Fett, it's Bosk. Because Bosk has sort of I mean, we've talked about, he doesn't really talk in the movie, of course, but he's been given voice, and it's sort of the classic lizard guy sort of voice.
Yeah. I think the only line he has in Empire is
yeah. So when he talks, I mean, he's got the same thing the Gorn captain has, like
100%.
Boba Fett, this is Bosk.
You could add a couple of extra S's to anywhere there's already an S in his speech pattern, and you got the gist.
He speaks a little like Cobra Commander.
A little bit.
It's Bosk.
That'll come up good on the mic.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the issue, though.
I know.
It just ends.
This comic, the structure of it is just over here, over there. Boom, bam, boom, bang, bang, dang, dang. Like, you get no sense of we go from Dash Rendar and Jix and stuff on Tatooine to Boba Fett. Nothing motivates any of this. It's just leaping all over the place. Princess Leia not in it at all, except briefly mentioned. You know, you're just like, oh my god, yeah.
And again, the comic is really more focused on Boba Fett to its detriment in some ways. He's barely mentioned in the book.
Yeah, it's focused on a very weird Boba Fett too. So no, it's not good.
He's a boss battle in the video game.
Of course he is. They want to sell games. People love Boba Fett.
Yeah.
People got to love the Fett Man.
But yeah, issue number 3, we're now halfway through Shadows of the Empire.
And this thing's cooking, baby. No.
I'll say this much. We're maybe like a third of the way through the novel.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. We're checking in with where we are in the novel. We're still early days.
The thing is, okay, we'll talk about this more next week, but next issue, like, blitzes through huge swaths of the novel between panels, even.
I will say, having already read it, that makes sense. There's a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, and so the comic is going to have to play some catch up next time, but as we continue on, we're going to be getting some wild stuff here, and we'll start getting into how truly despicable Prince Gisor is starting next issue.
Yeah, he's a scumbag.
Yeah, he's not great.
No. But of course, if you want more from us, you can head over to our Patreon page, which is patron.podbean.com/punchup. That's patron.podbean.com/punchup. You get cool exclusive bonus content from all the shows here at the Punch Up Entertainment Network.
Yes, indeed. And of course, one of the better ways to support the show is just head on over to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. There you can find this show, which is one of the best ways to watch this show, honestly, is over there on the YouTube, because then you can read along with the comic with us. Totally. And while you're there, check out all of our other shows. We got Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. We got the IP Squad plowing their way through. I believe this current season is about old, pulp heroes, right?
Open comic strip heroes, yes.
Yeah. We also have Punch Up Plays, where Elliot Lewis and I, a constant contributor to many of our other shows, are going through the Mass Effect series, and you can watch us really stumble our way through galactic politics.
There you go. Yeah.
While you're there, please
Star Wars.
Yeah. It's a little like Star Wars. Yeah. Like and subscribe while you're there, and comment below. Why not let us know below who was your favorite Star Wars toy from back in the day of this era? Like, obviously we had our poor Forloms sitting on the shelf. Me personally,
somebody's gonna write in and go, Forlom was my very favorite. How dare you? And that's great if that's the case.
For me, it was always the Stormtrooper Sergeant with the orange shoulder thingy. Sometimes they were called like Sand Troopers or Tatooine Troopers, but that was always my like go-to. Like, oh, if they've got an extra one of those, I'll get it if it's on the shelf. I had like 4 of them at one point.
Yeah.
You always need more Stormtroopers.
Sure. Yeah. No, you do always need more Stormtroopers. You needed cannon fodder.
Mm-hmm.
My Princess Leia needs to murder somebody.
But I think that's going to do it for us this week. So, as always, I've been Mike Ergoni.
I'm John Campbell.
And may the panel be with you.